Cricket media used to be pretty simple. Find your favourite newspaper, head to Cricket Info, and maybe a blog you like. Now just finding the best stories and writing is a huge challenge. You already have a job. You just want to read about cricket. Well, that is what the best of cricket is currently doing. They go out daily to find the newest cricket coverage and the best stories from any publication in the world. And when they can't discover what they want, they also hire some of the best writers to produce their own great stories. You can get the best of cricket via their website or on WhatsApp. They find cricket's best stories and give them to you every day. Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Morning Glory. What a weird opening session of cricket that was. We had we had maybe one of the worst starts I've ever seen to defending a total, and then eventually they got the ball roughly in the right area, and suddenly they looked like a really good side again. And I think they got out to 25-1 India, and I just pressed the button to back them, and that's when Constance hit the ball up in the air. And then not long after that, obviously, I think they came into about 3-1 was the lowest that they've got to. They're a little bit more than that, but you know it's a really well-timed break for India as well. Considering that there was a bit of madness in their method, they can just go off and settle now a little bit. Australia obviously still the most likely winners from here, but who knows what's going to happen. And as Chatanji said, this session will be the most important of the match. And what I love about this comment is it was obviously about the first session, but also goes again now. And I think Ravi Shastri finally got the funny side of it as well. He said, it would be really interesting to go back and look at how many times that was a realistic thought, that this was the most important session of the match, of the series, or whatever. And it didn't really matter anyway. Why are bowlers judged by average over strike rate? Rat asks. Quite simply because having a really good strike rate is a good second metric to have, but the game is won by runs. So what if you took a wicket every let's say 30 balls, but you were going at 10 runs and over? It's not a particularly effective bowler in Test match cricket. Gaurav says, what happened to the Cape Town wicket? I didn't expect that one. The wicket that we saw in Cape Town last time was souped up, and so they've souped it back down this time. Keshav says, why don't TV commentators mention the term wobble balls much? I hardly heard anyone credit Boland for his masterful use of wobble. Well, weirdly enough, too, Kerry O'Keefe kept talking about how Pat Cummins was bowling with a wobble ball, and then when he was talking about bowling, he was like, he just hits the seam every ball. And I'm like, yeah, but with a wobble ball? So, yeah, I find that a little bit weird. I think if you look at it, the way the commentary is done on TV, we don't always mention the ball as much. So I do think there's an element of that. Radio, you get it a little bit more. You'll hear, out swinger, in swinger, etc. Whereas when you're looking at the TV, we don't get that as much. But a lot of the old commentators don't like to mention it because they don't really believe it's a thing. And I think that's a big part of it. Waka says, is Bumrah 24-25 better than Johnson 13-14? Yes, but the difference between that is that Johnson 13-14 had Ryan Harris taking the wickets at the start, right? I think Johnson's was probably more dramatic just because of the pace and the bounces and everything else. But I think all things considered, I think Bumrah probably bowled better in that period. I think Bumrah bowled better. Crunk says, well, the match is over already, and basically what he's saying is without Bumrah, it is impossible to defend his total. I didn't think that was true. I thought it was more true the way they started, although I did actually back India. Let's see, there's a bunch of things, people getting a little bit weird, and then we'll get to more. Here we go. Gaurav says, would you advise Rohit and Virat to play county instead of IPL if they wish to play in England? I don't think they can they? I mean, if you're asking me personally, I would have thought that would be a very hard thing for either of them to be able to do, and say to the franchise owners and everything, and also they make a lot of money from the BCCI for being there. So I don't think that would be the case. I mean, if they really wanted to play in England, that would be their best option, but that's not really how cricket works anymore. Raul says, Colley's going crazy. It's weird that sandpaper is in his mind. I just brought this one up because I don't know if I saw this thing on TikTok yesterday where Jasper Brummer was taking his shoe off, and something came out of his shoe. And then I'm assuming it was an Australian uploader who said, who put the word cheat in. I'm still trying to work out how you can cheat with having something in your shoe. And the racist comments, incredible underneath. Anyway, not to worry about it. Yeah, just on. So just to follow up on the sandpaper one, as Huzafa says, is SCG crowd chanting Colley's wanker while Colley responds by mimicking sandpaper. How can people say this sort of theatre and drama is bad for Test cricket? It was certainly fun. I don't think also that is a wanker chance as full on in not as full on, like it's such a Melbourne thing. But you know, Colley transcends city limits. Where are we? Cricket says, where does Colley rank in the list of top Test batters of all time if he goes today? He's probably fringe top 30, I would have thought, at the moment. I look at these things very, very differently than other people. I look at the case that you make, that you put yourself in the great conversation, which other people. So I'm maybe more forgiving on, you know, Ponting and Meandad and Greenwich and Colley playing on and struggling at the end of their careers, because I know that so many other players have retired in the middle of their prime, making their numbers look a little bit better, right? Like, so I'm probably a little bit more familiar. I think he's slightly higher in our book, but we had to cut our list off earlier, obviously, in our book, but I can't remember exactly. Porger says, the next session is very important. We'll determine the result of the series. I love it. That might be the first time that's been right, by the way. Cricket says Jarrod thinks not even top 25 genius. I'm not sure if that's about Colley. I don't know exactly where he is in the list. Like I can't remember the numbers of every player. He's certainly around that number in our list. Yeah, no, he's definitely around that number in our list at that point. Favorite commentators current era explaining what is actually happening versus cliches. I mean, I'm not sure this is the day for favorite commentators. You know, I've said a lot about Duel and Ian Bishop. I think they're definitely two commentators that are trying to think about the game and talk about that. Where are we here? Yeah, KS says they'd be 50 for 5 if Bumrah on. The market obviously knew that he wasn't going to bowl because I think India are about 5.5-ish. And I was like, that number's not right if Bumrah is going to be bowling. So the market obviously either assumed he wasn't going to bowl or were just guessing he wasn't going to bowl. So I wonder what India would have started, probably 3.7, and whether they would be 5 for 50 or not. Like, I mean, did you say 5 for 50? Yeah. Whether they would be they would have got to that or not, I don't know. But your general, they just wouldn't have gone for the runs, right? Like, I think that's the bigger difference. And he would have attacked the stumps yet. We really haven't seen, you know, with India's winnings, we saw the ball keeping low a little bit and causing some issues there. We haven't actually seen that with the Indian bowls, the way that they've bowled. Ashwin says, in a country like India, how do you gauge who should be given a long rope? Like, why KL and Shubman and Rohit in the past and not Bahari, Mayank, Safraz, Karuna? You are looking for players who have the game to play everywhere. So I think there's a lot of talk in India about, oh, this guy averages 60 and this guy averages 70 and everything else. And it's a bit like England cricket and going, oh, we should, get Porter into the side, or, we should get, was it Mark Davies back in the day? All these different players, it was like, who might average 21 in first class cricket with the ball. Great. Is their game going to be able to move around the world of cricket? That's what you're looking for with India. So if you look at KL, you're looking at a player where they know that there is a special skill that he has. And they've been proven right that he could score runs overseas against fast bowlers. Shubman Gill, again, same sort of thing. Rohit Sharma, again, same sort of thing. If you look at some of the other players that you're talking about there's either more question marks or it's not as obvious. So those are the sorts of players you're probably going to take a bigger punt on. Steve Smith, the curse of the 10,000th run, says Genius Genie. The hell of a place to start. I feel like the most romantic thing to do now is for him to retire and then own that number. Copyright that number for the rest of his life. Raghu says, who is going to win this match? Oh, well, Australia should still win it, realistically. Let me just look at the Australia is, according to the market, Australia is about an 82% chance, and India is about a 20% chance. So that means India win 1 in 5 from here. Seems fair, doesn't it? The problem India has is, of course, they don't have a third bowler, really. I mean, they might bring Nitish Reddy on. They don't have a third bowler, and Bumrah's not there. With the score as it is at the moment, with India having another bowler, they'd be in a huge position. No one pays me $20 to say I would love to see you work with Ashwin. To be fair, yeah, there's a possibility. I haven't really reached out yet to him. There was a brief conversation with that I had with his wife again recently, who's lovely. But it's not like I said, oh, we need to get on a podcast together or anything yet. Just retired and everything. I'm sure we'll work out a way to do it. There's a couple of things I want to chat to him about anyway, sort of the future. I want to know what his plans are as much as anything else. But yeah, he's just retired. Let him relax a little bit. I'm not going to hit him up straight away and be like, dude, this is our time. Where else are we? Rajendra says, what if India played Prashid from the beginning for Sundar or Nitish? Well, I mean, Nitish has been really important with the batting, right? And Sundar hasn't played all the games. What you're really asking is, what if India had played 4 seamers all the way through? And to be fair to them, they've actually got quite a bit of batting out of the number 8 position at times. Like, I haven't looked at, can I look at it all the way through? But, if you look at what India have managed to do in the last, whatever this would be now, when was it, 15? If you look at what India has been able to do in this series, it's probably fair to say that there has been an element of needing that number 8. Like, I know that that's going to annoy the fans, but there's a reason why they've continued to go with it. What's weird is that they haven't always used those guys as bowlers. Nitesh, probably, I get it a little bit more. But yeah, out of the number 8 position, God. Yeah, there we go. Now, some of this is probably slightly inflated. But yeah, they have got quite a few runs, haven't they? It's slightly inflated by the 100, but you can see why they've gone that way. They obviously decided that this was their best bet. I think looking back, you could make an argument that both teams should have picked an extra seamer all the way through, right? So, when you think about it from that point of view, I don't have. Yeah, I think when you think about it from that point of view, it's a hard one to sort of fully get your head around. Samba says some nice gift exchange between the two sides. Freebies from the bowlers, 2 easy wickets for India. The Cousins one was weird because he just didn't get himself in a good position. I think someone in our group chat said, "Oh, he looks like Butler." Butler would have been leaning forward over the ball. Leaning back is a slog, right? Leaning forward is getting your weight in the right area. That Marnus thing though is incredible. This is what is really annoying about Virat Kohli, right? Is that players quite constantly go out in the same way over and over and over again. Same sort of length, same sort of lines, not always the same sort of shots. And we just don't hear about it. Marnus is doing exactly what Virat is doing. Just these faffs outside off stump. I think he's played that. I think he's gone out playing that particular shot 3 times and probably been dropped maybe once as well, maybe twice. And no one ever goes on about it. Anyway. What are the changes one expect post the 3-1 result in both camps? Well, it isn't 3-1 yet. Look, I think I said from the start I expected retirements. So Ashwin was the first one to go. I still think there's a chance of at least one more Indian retirement. I don't think we'll see any Australian retirements now because I would assume they're going to make the World Test Championship. And because of that, there's no real reason for them to go. So they might go afterwards. But yeah, we're going to see Australia's a very old side. So, Kwadra and Smith are, possibilities to be able to leave. I don't think Stark wants to leave, but there might be a sort of a change in the team when it comes to Stark. That, they might start to go, well, Boland's doing this. And they'll go in that way. Gaurav says, the way the top 4 are struggling all around, will soon we see the best batter of the team playing at number 5 instead of number 4? I don't think so, but I get your point. I think what we'll see is probably it'll look like the number 5 is better. I think that will be the change. Jarrod in West Indies jersey. Yeah, this is one of the team jumpers. You should go and pull a Shamar Joseph for India. Would be better than most of them. I don't think I'd be bowling particularly well for India. Umang says, should I keep watching this match or go back to sleep? The answer is always going to be keep watching this match. Triple Stroke says, Boomer to come back and finish the Aussies. I don't think he can. It's an internal injury, so I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption, based on everything we know. I don't think he can come back on and bowl now. Like, he's been off the field for so long. What do you get? You get about a half an hour's grace. Yeah, I think if he was going to bowl, he needed to be on the field. So the fact he wasn't out there, I thought, meant that he wasn't going to bowl. But I could be wrong with that. And I don't know the full thing with his injury. Eric Mann says, Siraj needs a serious course correction, not just his test, but also his career. Krishna has bowled well here, and the reconfig of his bowling lineup should be in the works. So it's really interesting that you think Prasid Krishna is like ready to take over from Mohammad Siraj. In this test match, we've seen Prasid Krishna bowl exactly the same sort of wide filth down the leg side as Siraj has on 2 different occasions. Like, he's clearly not 100% in control of what he does at all times. And Siraj, to be fair to him, is much more, compared to him, much more in control. I think Siraj has bowled fine in this test match. But look, he's not a consistent bowler. We know that, and we've talked about that a lot on this channel. Oh, sorry, that was not the one I meant to do. Oh, no, I've already done that one too. Let me get down because there might be a couple that are a bit old here. Was it 144? Max says, tie test for the win. 130s you can get, Max. I'm still got my 130s. I don't think they've changed at all. Perhaps when Australia lost the 3rd wicket, they came in a little bit. G. Davis says, what do you think of Prasid? He has picked up quality wickets, but not a great starter. Could he be the 3rd seamer we're looking for? Yes. The issue is, and I've said this a lot with him, I've said this even in limited overs cricket, I don't think he always understands that what his best line or length is. So he doesn't have, like, I remember watching him in the A game, not the A, oh yeah, versus Australia A or whatever it was, one of the early games. And like, I was watching him bowl really, really full, and I was like, you don't need to bowl that full, dude. You're tall. You've got a big, high action. Leave that to other people. It's like just bowl a really good length that has them in the right situation all the way through. And to me, that's the issue. At his age, he should know what his ideal length is, and you know, forget being able to change it on certain wickets. Just know what your ideal line and length is. And when I watch him bowl everywhere, I just feel like he never knows. It's a big issue, I think, for him. And compare that to Siraj from the question before. Siraj knows what his best line and length is. If he's not in the right rhythm, obviously he can overpitch sometimes, and he can be a little bit wayward and everything else. But he knows what his best ball is. And with Prashant Krishna, I don't know. Eric says, thoughts on the India decision in team selection. Washington feels like the wrong play given how the pitches have been last two tests. Keeping hindsight aside. Yeah, as I said, I think if you're going to say that, wouldn't you say the exact same thing about Nathan Lyon? And no one's been saying that because Australia's been winning, right? Shriram says, was Sangakkara the best in terms of retiring on a high? I definitely think Sangakkara retired with probably 2 or 3 more good years available to him. I'm trying to think of other players. I mean, if you want the best in terms of retiring on a high, it's probably someone like Bob Simpson, right? Who like retires like in the middle of his peak years. Like he's like, what, 31, 30 when he retires? So there are some of those older Australian players who just stop playing really, really young. Can using baseball tactics be an option for Kohli considering his existing attempts to counter the outside off stump ball have failed? I think I've said this before. I think the idea of a 37, 38-year-old playing in that style seems pretty unlikely to me. I don't see it as a legitimate option for him at the moment. Being more attacking, I get, but yeah, outside of that, I wouldn't have thought so. Where are we here? Barrett says, Virat Kohli play Ranji. Most international senior cricketers do not play any domestic cricket. Most Australian senior cricketers don't play any domestic cricket either. Like most English senior cricketers don't play any county cricket. Most top South African cricketers play a little bit of, but not much. Yeah, we've gone beyond that. That conversation is like 10 years old now. Like I don't even see how we could go back to that kind of way of thinking about things. Sean says Rob Aaron is better than any traditional commentator. I learned more from him in the watch-alongs than most normal commentators. Rob Aaron's fantastic. I've been messaging with him today. He had money on India overnight, and when India lost their wickets today, he was in a very, very cranky mood. Wacko says, Jarrod, Virat is 700 runs away from 10K. Do you think he gets there? Ooh, I would say no at the moment. I would say no. Mr. says, I'm calling it, this performance will impact on Champions Trophy. India's going to lose. Cannot see how that's the case at all. Param says, do you think Hazelwood would have played if he was fit with Stark's injury concern? I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Do you think Hazelwood would have played if he was fit? I think Hazelwood would have played if he was fit, yes. So Stark's injury is in a place that they're not particularly, like, I think it's causing him discomfort, but I don't think they're particularly worried about his, I don't think they're particularly worried about him making it really, really bad. But yeah. Mr. Grader says, Australia 3-1 humiliation loading. This pathetic mediocre team deserves it. Well, they haven't been mediocre. They certainly haven't been pathetic. It will be like one of the closest 3-1 results we've ever seen, right? Like, I don't really understand that sort of thoughts. Yeah, I was thinking about this myself. I'll show you. I mean, they didn't use him early on when the guys are spraying it everywhere. I don't think there's any reason why he couldn't be a threat on this wicket, being with everything that we know about this pitch so far. I think that, so I could certainly see why that might be the case, that he might come on. It's also possible they just don't bowl him, right? And they just go, like, look, we're only going to be bowling this many overs. Everyone's going to get a break after this. Jarrod cursed Australia. Now India was going to win. I had money on India. I don't know how I cursed Australia. Yeah. Ashan says, take a dive, concussion sub, Washington Sundar, bring in Nitesh Rana. So you can't do that. It has to be another spinner that would come in, or an all-rounder, which isn't going to help them particularly a lot at the moment. But those are the two things that would have to come in. That's one of the things that is Nitesh Rana. I did it as well, but I knew what he meant. Harshit Rana. Rohit says, who is going to be the first change here? Yeah, it will. I would assume it will be Reddy if that is the case. And Noah says, do you believe things are not right in the India team as mentioned in media reports? How accurate are these kinds of reports generally? And can we guess the dressing room? Look, here's the first thing that you need to know. I have been in team situations and I have talked to, and not everyone has the same opinion about everything, right? That's a very normal thing to happen. And when you're losing, it becomes more evident. But I've seen the exact same sorts of things happen when teams are winning as well. I've seen fractures in winning teams. I've seen fractures in losing teams. It's a very, very normal thing to have happen. And on the back of India, they've got a new coach, a new setup. They've now, this has been a troubling tour for them, even if they haven't been horrendous. Like, they're not dominating, and they're losing, right? And they lost the last one. There should be issues. That's a normal thing. I just think that in India, everything is blown so far out of normal. It's like, well, of course, you're in a situation where this is going to happen. Like, that's just Test cricket. Genius says, all it took was dropping the main Indian captain and stress fracture for Bumrah for Kohli to captain again. I did think it was funny, like when they started really poorly at the beginning. It's like, see, Bumrah is a genius captain. It just tells you how random all that sort of stuff can be. Did India miss a trick by not making Bumrah duck into a good length ball to get Rana as a concussion sub? Being this is the second one, it's worth saying that if you have a once in a generational talent, maybe putting their life on the line is not the best idea to get them as a concussion sub. There was, of course, that period where India, the Indian women's team, had their wicketkeeper get hit in the head over and over again, but those were pretty soft blows. And to be honest, I don't think they were doing it on purpose. I think they were just taking advantage of the fact that she was getting hit on the head quite a bit. Rohit says, how would you rate Constance's performance in this test series? He helped them win the first test. He's really confident at this level. He's 19 and he has some flaws. I still worry about the way he plays spin. And I think he sort of got sucked in a little bit to his own narrative about himself. He just needs to go back and batting. But if you're 19 and you're showing this sort of confidence and you've already played a huge part in Australia winning a game, I think that you've got to be pretty happy with all that, don't you? Noah says, why didn't they play Prashid instead of the other seamers? So I don't know. I think, to be fair with Harshit, I think the first test, he sort of came from nowhere. I would assume that was based on form in the nets and just how people were playing him. That's certainly how it looked to me, which is, again, a fairly normal thing to have happen. If that was the random off. I always thought Prashid Krishna should play. But as I said, going back to the India A stuff, even when he was taking wickets, I just felt like he wasn't really in control of his line of length as the way I would have wanted. And that's, if you're taking a three-man attack, that's probably why you haven't seen him. Akashdeep is in complete control of his line of length, and Harshit is not as much, but because he's just banging, he knows what his line of length is. And so I think there's I think that's very different. So I think it's as much as anything about control. The thing with Prashid Krishna is his best ball is obviously wicket taking at test level. But if you can't repeat it, that doesn't help as much. Grove says, do you have an ugly bias towards some players? Like if they're underperforming, you don't want them dropped. Just like I like Siraj, even if he underperforms. No, my bias is not really like towards a player, like, I mean, liking them or anything. Like, unless I know them. Obviously, you probably have biases towards players you know a little bit. But even within that, I think I'm, pretty honest with players. I've lost a couple of friendships with players for writing things about them before. So, these things happen. More the bias is about who the player is and what their treatment is and what situation they're in. And I think that's the thing that I'm probably much more likely to look at and than anything else. Of like, whereas our fans are just like, he hasn't made any runs, he should be out the same. It's like, well, no one made any runs in the last 4 test matches, so maybe that's more to do with something else. All right. So what else do we have here? Happy Jit says, Siraj is usually India's third pace option, and there's going to be the man. Doesn't seem to flourish when he's the spearhead. I think this is the big thing with Siraj, and obviously we're seeing a lot of questions about Siraj and everything else in this, right at the moment, but in general. I thought if Siraj was their third seamer coming into this, they had a real chance of winning this series. And so I had them at 3-2, losing 3-2 to Australia when Siraj was going to be their third seamer. And when he was going to be their second seamer, I moved that to 4-1, right? I like Siraj as a third seamer because if it all works, good luck. And if it doesn't, you can go back to your first 2 seamers and you hope that he finds rhythm in at least one spell. But yeah. Mr. Wall says, can Hawkeye be used for finding deviations associated with a nick? Yeah, we've talked about that a bit. I think there are 4 different kinds of technology that you can use for looking for nicks, and I would have Hawkeye as one of those as well. G. Davis says, Betfair question, does tie count as a draw in a 3-way bet? I would assume, and I could be wrong, that if it's a tie in the main betting market, you don't get your profit. So when I had a healthy profit in this game and in the last game, I put money on the tie just to make sure that I still came out with money. Because the last thing you want to do when you're massively up on a bet is, and I've had this happen a couple of times in T20 games, USA Pakistan, that tie cost me a fortune. Because I thought USA would do well in that game. I got them at really good odds. I backed them a couple of times, had this huge amount of money, and then of course the tie happens, and I lost all my money. So since then I've been quite careful of like looking at the game and going, oh, there's a chance of a tie here, so we're going to go in that way. That's it for us today. Thank you very much. Oh, not for us today. We'll be back with the scoreboard, and then probably, I would assume, me and Bayram will do a podcast on this game later on today as well. And I might even stay up and watch a little bit more of Afghanistan, Zimbabwe. My God, Zimbabwe, that game go. I still think Zimbabwe can win that game, by the way. Anyway, let's one game at a time. Got to take it just one game at a time. Cricket media used to be pretty simple. Find your favorite newspaper, head to Cricinfo, and maybe a blog you like. Now just finding the best stories and writing is a huge challenge. You already have a job. You just want to read about cricket. Well, that is what the best of cricket is currently doing. They go out daily to find the newest cricket coverage and the best stories from any publication in the world. And when they can't discover what they want, they also hire some of the best writers to produce their own great stories. You can get the best of cricket via their website or on WhatsApp. They find cricket's best stories and give them to you every day.